Chapter 41. Belle didn't express her gratitude outright. Instead, she simply said a faint, thanks. Earl didn't seem to mind. He found a seat, sat down, and began browsing the web to pass the time. Nearby, a chubby guy named Evan Gomez was playing Skybound Wars. Evan was skilled, but at that moment, he seemed to be struggling. Just as Earl was watching with mild interest, Evan turned to him and asked, "Do you play this game?" Earl gave a modest nod. "I know a little." Evan was clearly in a hurry as he said, "Take over for me. I've got to meet some friends." Then, he dashed off. Sitting down at the computer, Earl realized that the situation was dire. The game was on the verge of total defeat. Instead of giving up, he felt a surge of determination. Earl's hands moved like lightning as he gripped the mouse and keyboard, his eyes fixed on the screen with laser focus, fully immersed in the game. Slowly but surely, the tide of the battle began to shift. His quick reflexes and brilliant tactics left the opposing players frustrated and swearing angrily in the chat. In no time, Earl had gained a decisive upper hand, taking complete control of the match. Just then, Evan returned with a couple of friends, only to find Earl dominating the battlefield. They stared, dumbfounded, as he led their team to victory. Even Belle was drawn to the scene, her curiosity piqued as she watched Earl pull off the incredible comeback. Players around the internet cafe turned their heads to witness the action. One lanky guy asked Evan what was going on, and Evan stammered, "Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. That's Chris Weston, the national #1 player, and he's getting crushed. And absolutely obliterated. How is this even possible?" The atmosphere in the cafe shifted instantly. People couldn't believe their ears. Evan's reputation in Skybound Wars was well known among the regulars, but finding out his opponent was Chris explained why the match had been so brutal. And now, here was a mysterious player who not only stood up to Chris but thoroughly trounced him. "This is the most amazing match I've ever seen. He's incredible. Please teach me, mentor. I'm begging you. I'll bow before you, oh great one." Belle was equally shocked. As a fan of Skybound Wars, she had heard of Chris Weston's legendary status. Known as the King of Solara Mainland and even Eastern Everreach, he was a world-class champion. And now, this nobody had utterly humiliated him. Suddenly, a gasp rose from the crowd as a burly young man leapt forward. Earl glanced over and recognized him. It was Leo Samara, one of the guys from Skyburst Gaming Cafe who used to hang out with Zane Villarama. Back then, Earl had beaten those punks so completely that they ended up on their knees, begging for mercy. Leo had admired him ever since. It seemed fate had brought them together again. Evan, brimming with curiosity, turned to Leo. "Leo, do you know him?" Leo puffed out his chest with pride. "Of course. He's the guy the first told you about, the legend who destroyed us in Perthter City when we played Skybound Wars. We didn't stand a chance." Though the defeat had been humiliating at the time, Leo now saw it as a badge of honor. After all, today he had witnessed Earl crush the Skybound Wars superstar Chris Weston with his own eyes. Chapter 42. To most people, being defeated by Earl was an honor in itself. Belle stood nearby, listening as if hearing a captivating story unfold. She couldn't help but see Earl in a new light. At this moment, the crowd around Earl had grown so thick that he was completely surrounded. Defeating someone like Chris Weston, a legendary figure in Skybound Wars, made them believe Earl must be an equally famous gaming prodigy. Whispers began spreading as people tried to uncover Earl's background. Die-hard Skybound Wars fans, their excitement barely contained, were already eager to ask Earl to be their mentor. Leo stepped forward with a wide grin, his tone humble and respectful. "Brother, I'd really like to get to know you. Could you do me the honor?" Earl replied indifferently, "I'm Earl Hernandez, maybe we'll talk again sometime." With that, he grabbed Belle's hand and headed toward the exit. Leo hurriedly followed, calling out, "Hey, Earl, don't leave. I really admire you. How about I treat you to a meal? Please." Belle glanced at Earl, astonished. She hadn't expected him to have such charisma. Even someone like Leo, who was clearly a prominent figure in the gaming community, was willing to lower himself just to have dinner with him. Was it really just because Earl was skilled at gaming? As Earl was contemplating Leo's offer, the cafe door suddenly flew open with a loud bang. A group of tattooed thugs stormed in, their expressions fierce. Leading them was Griffin Storm, the buzz-cut guy who had earlier tried to flirt with Belle and ended up being humiliated. Griffin scanned the crowd and pointed directly at Earl. "Boss, it's him. He's the one who hit me. You've got to teach him a lesson." The thugs quickly surrounded Earl, and the atmosphere grew tense. Belle, having grown up sheltered, had never seen such a scene. Her face turned pale with fear, and she instinctively clung to Earl, burying herself in his chest. Earl caught a faint whiff of her fragrance as she pressed against him. Boldly, he wrapped an arm around her slim waist, pulling her closer for reassurance, his gaze calm as he studied the approaching group. At the front of the gang stood a tall, lanky man, clearly their leader. He stepped forward, his sharp eyes scanning Earl up and down. "So, you're the one who hit my guy." Earl met his gaze, his voice steady and commanding. "What of it? Your guy was harassing my girlfriend. You expect me to just let that slide? You've got guts," the lanky man growled. "I didn't see what happened, but here's how this works. You kneel and apologize to my guy right now, or you won't be leaving here on your own 2 feet. Earl's expression turned cold as a smirk played on his lips. "Go ahead and try." The man, Caspian del Rosario, was enraged by Earl's defiance. His gang began shifting restlessly, ready to pounce at a moment's notice. Before the situation could escalate, Leo stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "You'd better take back what you just said, or you'll regret it." Caspian finally noticed Leo's presence, and the arrogance on his face faltered. His expression shifted to one of unease. "Is he your guy?" Leo's face darkened, his tone sharp. "Don't talk nonsense. He's my brother. Let me make one thing clear. If you so much as lay a finger on him, you'll be picking your teeth off the floor." Caspian clearly held Leo in high regard. His expression flickered with uncertainty as his confidence wavered. Under normal circumstances, Caspian would have backed off in respect for Leo, knowing that Leo wasn't someone he could mess with. But with dozens of his men standing behind him, retreating now would ruin his reputation and undermine his authority as a leader. After a moment of internal struggle, Caspian gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He turned to Leo, his tone conflicted. "Leo, I'd normally listen to you, but my guy got roughed up today. I have to stand up for him." Chapter 43. Belle was initially frightened, but when she saw Leo effortlessly suppressing Caspian and noticing that Leo had addressed Earl as his brother, her courage grew. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, Earl raised a hand to stop her. Earl didn't waste words. His voice was calm and steady. "Set your terms." Caspian clenched his teeth, his tone low as he replied, "We'll settle this one-on-one. If you beat me, I'll let it go, and like Leo, I'll call you brother. But if I win, you owe my guy an apology, and we'll move on from this." It was a calculated decision. Caspian sought a way to maintain peace with Leo while also giving his subordinates an explanation and showing Earl some respect. Leo chuckled. He knew that Caspian wasn't just tough, he was a man of honor and a skilled fighter. If it were anyone else, Leo might have stepped in to stop the duel. But since it was Earl, there was no need. In fact, Leo was eager to see Earl display his dominance again. Earl's expression remained unchanged, exuding calm confidence. "Let's do this." He stood there with his hands casually tucked in his pockets, emanating the aura of someone ready to take on 10 men at once. His sheer presence was overwhelming. Caspian felt the provocation. Known for his strength, he had never encountered someone as audacious as Earl. A glint of menace flashed in his eyes. "Don't say I didn't warn you." Taking a deep breath, Caspian launched a powerful punch. The strike was swift and brutal, veins bulging on his arm, exuding raw force. But Earl's hand shot out like lightning, gripping Caspian's wrist. With a sudden twist, a sickening crack echoed, the joint dislocated. Before Caspian could react, Earl swept his leg, sending him flying through the air. The entire sequence was executed with surgical precision, fast, ruthless, and efficient. Earl's dominance was absolute. Caspian's subordinates froze momentarily, but Griffin, the one with the buzz cut, broke the silence with a roar. "Everyone, attack!" Caspian, who was dazed and reeling from Earl's blow, couldn't stop them. A cold smile curled at the corner of Earl's lips. He moved like a whirlwind. His first kick shattered the thigh bone of a yellow-haired lackey, making it bend unnaturally. Bloodied teeth flew from another two lackeys as Earl's punches found their mark. Grabbing another thug by his mohawk, he used the man as a human weapon, swinging him around and knocking the others aside. Griffin suffered the most. Earl grabbed what little hair he had, and when it didn't hold, a patch of scalp came loose. A series of bloody slaps and elbow strikes left Griffin incapacitated. Finally, Earl snapped the leg of another lackey with a resounding crack and tossed him aside like garbage, and he landed near the trash can. In mere moments, the fight was over. The scene was carnage, with Caspian's crew groaning in pain, barely clinging to consciousness. The onlookers gasped in shock, their whispers filled with awe. "Is this guy even human? I've never seen anyone this hardcore. He must be in the special forces. But even they wouldn't be this brutal. Maybe he's a security guard. In novels, they're always the ultimate badasses. No, he could be a chef, a cab driver, or even some sketchy parlor's attendant." By the time Caspian stumbled to his feet, his men were defeated, reduced to a chorus of moans. Earl, however, remained composed, exuding an air of invincibility. The fear and respect in Caspian's eyes were unmistakable. He was utterly convinced of Earl's superiority. Leo chuckled, his voice light-hearted. "Caspian, didn't I tell you before? But you didn't believe me. Remember that time in Perthter City? Victor Grayson led over a dozen guys to ambush Lance and me. In the end, they were beaten so badly that they were begging on their knees. Do you know who took them down?" Chapter 44. Leo didn't explicitly say it, but the answer was clear enough. Leo came from a respectable background. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been mingling with people like Zane. However, the scene of Earl mercilessly beating Victor had left Leo in awe. His pride would never have allowed him to call anyone brother upon their first meeting, unless it was someone like Earl. Caspian struggled with his emotions for a moment before finally bowing his head to Earl. "From now on, you're my boss. Here's my number. If you ever need anything in this area, just say the word, and I'll make it happen, no questions asked." Caspian was a man of his word. Though he had been thoroughly beaten, he accepted his defeat with dignity. Behind him, his followers stood silent, offering no resistance. Seeing the tension ease, Leo quickly stepped in to smooth things over. "Earl, now that Caspian's sworn his loyalty, how about we celebrate? I'll treat everyone to a hotel nearby. There's even more fun planned for tonight." He shot Earl a conspiratorial wink. Belle, however, frowned. "What nonsense are you spouting? We've got things to do. Save the chatter for another time." Her initial good impression of Leo had taken a sharp nosedive after his last comment. Earl wasn't one to dwell on the matter, so he took the opportunity to echo her sentiment. He said, "Not today. We've got plans later." Leo chuckled awkwardly. "All right then, my bad, Belle. I didn't mean anything by it. I spoke out of turn. You two go on ahead." Seeing that there was nothing more to address, Caspian turned to Earl. "Boss, if there's nothing else, I'll be heading out. Just call me if you ever need anything." With a nod from Earl, Caspian gathered his battered crew and left in a hurry. Once outside the internet cafe, Earl released Belle's hand and exhaled deeply. After catching his breath, he turned to Belle, only to find her staring at him with wide, curious eyes, her gaze as bright and clear as a tranquil autumn lake. Belle couldn't hide her intrigue. Had this seemingly ordinary guy really taken down Chris, the legendary Skybound Wars champion? Chris was a household name in the esports community, a giant among players. The fact that Earl had managed to defeat him seemed almost too incredible to believe. But what stirred Belle even more was the commanding presence Earl had displayed during the fight. She knew fighting wasn't right, but in that moment, when Earl had stood protectively in front of her and pulled her into his arms, she couldn't deny it, he had captivated her. Her thoughts wandered back to the first time she had stepped into Earl's dorm. He had been teaching Luca, the famous Alnewgo University singer and top guitar contender, how to play. At the time, she had been stunned. But now, upon reflection, it didn't seem so implausible. After all, what could be more extraordinary than a seemingly unremarkable guy defeating Christ or single-handedly taking down a gang of thugs? "Why are you staring at me like that?" Earl frowned, feeling uneasy under Belle's lingering gaze. Belle bit her lip, torn between her desire to ask how he had accomplished all of this and the realization of how absurd it all seemed. It was like something straight out of a myth. Chapter 45. Belle opened her mouth to speak, but what came out instead was, "Hey, Big Bun, is it a crime to look at you a little longer?" Earl didn't bother to respond and started to walk away. Belle hesitated for a moment before finally saying, "You're really good at gaming." Still, Earl didn't even acknowledge her. Frowning, Belle tried again. "By the way, have you been in a lot of fights before?" Earl gave no answer. Unable to hold back, Belle sighed and offered some advice. "Fighting isn't good. You really shouldn't do that anymore." After a brief pause, she asked, "Was that you teaching Luca how to play guitar in the dorm before?" As impressed as she was by Earl's skill in gaming, Belle was more drawn to guys with depth, talent, and a sense of purpose. Earl simply shook his head. "We were just exchanging ideas. That was it." Belle didn't buy it. Luca was practically a musical genius, yet Earl, someone who seemed so unremarkable, had the ability to hold a meaningful conversation with him. It only made Belle more curious about Earl. "Then, why don't you pursue music?" she asked. Belle loved music, which was why she had chosen to attend a music academy. She admired talented musicians, and the fact that Earl could even discuss music with someone like Luca spoke volumes about his potential. Someone like him not pursuing music seemed like such a waste. Earl shook his head again. "I'm tone deaf. How would that work?" "What?" Belle's eyes reflected her disappointment. Before they knew it, they had arrived at the dorm building. Earl said, "You should head in. I'm going back too." Just as he turned to leave, Belle called out from behind, "Wait a minute." "What is it?" Earl turned, his face full of confusion. Belle lowered her head shyly, her fingers fiddling with the hem of her skirt. "Big Bun, I wanted to ask. Were you serious about what you said earlier?" Earl blinked, puzzled. "What did I say?" "You know, that thing you said." Belle stomped her foot in frustration, but Earl, despite his excellent memory, had completely forgotten whatever it was she meant. Belle ground her teeth in anger. "You big idiot, no wonder you're still single. I hope you stay that way forever." With that, she turned on her heel and stormed off. Earl stood there, utterly baffled. He spent the entire walk home trying to decipher what she had meant. After that outing, however, Belle's attitude toward Earl had noticeably warmed. Chapter 46. Every morning, Belle would send a text to wake Earl up. Whenever she had free time, she would drag Earl along for meals or shopping trips. Sometimes, on a whim, she would even pester him to teach her how to play Skybound Wars. Additionally, she had gone out of her way to purchase several matching couple items for the two of them. What annoyed Earl the most was that ever since Belle gave him that nickname, she had stopped calling him his actual name. Instead, she had taken to calling him Big Bun. Meanwhile, the dorm atmosphere had grown tense lately, especially for Samuel. His crush, Jenna, had been getting closer to Tyler Evanson, a rich kid from off-campus. Rumors even suggested that they were now living together. Tyler, with his flashy car and apartment, had captured Jenna's heart. Compared to him, Samuel, with his humble background and only his academic excellence to show, felt outclassed. Even his disadvantage in height seemed to weigh against him in this competition. Isaac and Joshua were spending more time with Miranda and Queenie, while Ronnie's relentless pursuit of Anya Bennett seemed to be gaining ground. Despite Ronnie's unconventional appearance, his well-off background as a local of Alnewgo City was starting to sway Anya. Jessica, the dorm leader, had once tried her luck with Luca but to no avail. As for Earl, he had little interaction with the girls from their shared dorm room. In fact, he had even forgotten most of their names. Yet, this didn't affect the friendly relations between the two dorm groups. Joshua, ever the planner, was working on organizing a group outing for everyone, generously offering to cover all the costs himself. At the same time, the selection process for the freshman basketball tournament was underway. With his impressive skills, Joshua was easily appointed captain of the School of Finance basketball team, while Isaac secured the position of starting center. Occasionally, Earl would hear bits of news about Bianca Bustamante, the campus beauty. Alongside Luca, she was regarded as one of the most outstanding freshmen. Bianca had joined the student council, become a broadcast host for the campus radio station, and earned the opportunity to study abroad at Brighton University as an exchange student. What caught everyone's attention, however, was her invitation to join the exclusive Summit Alliance. The Summit Alliance held a legendary status at Alnewgo University, known for its secrecy and selectivity. Only the most exceptional students received invitations. The group, founded by members of the Alumni Association's core circle, represented the pinnacle of the university's social hierarchy. Its members often went on to extraordinary achievements, from founding companies and obtaining patents to becoming shareholders in public enterprises. Being part of the Summit Alliance offered a pathway to Alnewgo University's prestigious alumni network, granting access to countless resources and connections. The opportunities available through these channels were nothing short of extraordinary, a treasure trove of opportunities for any student. Hearing that Bianca had been invited into such an elite circle, Earl felt a mix of pride for her and a growing sense of urgency. The girl of his dreams was becoming increasingly extraordinary. If he didn't work harder, he feared that he would be left far behind. Though his online persona, Soul, had made waves in the digital music scene, Earl's ambitions weren't confined to that realm. His plugin software had also gained popularity, and his songs, Heart's Desire, and Time, continued to generate steady income. In just over 2 months, his savings had exceeded $1 million. But Earl wasn't content to stop there. He had set his sights on transitioning from creating tools to developing games, a move that required much more than technical expertise. Building a successful game demanded substantial funding and a talented team. Fortunately, Patrick had agreed to join his venture, but even with $1 million in savings, it wasn't nearly enough to develop a large-scale game. Adding to the challenge, the surge in popularity of Bloody Dawn had led to a flood of plugins in the market, making competition fiercer. Game companies were also ramping up efforts to crack down on such software, underscoring the risks and instability of staying in that business. Earl knew creating boosts wasn't a sustainable path. He needed to pivot to game development quickly. The road ahead was filled with obstacles, but Earl was determined to push forward, accumulate the necessary capital, and build something extraordinary. With relentless resolve, he was ready to face the challenges head-on. Chapter 47. Winter had arrived, and the cold wind swept through with abandon. On Saturday, Earl was busy working when he received a call from Belle. Her voice carried a playful, almost coquettish tone as she invited him out for lunch and shopping. Despite Earl repeatedly telling her not to call him Big Bun, Belle seemed to enjoy it far too much to stop. Before long, Belle showed up at Earl's dorm, dressed impeccably and lightly perfumed. It was clear she had gone out of her way to look her best for their outing, leaving Earl little room to refuse. After lunch, Belle drove Earl to the shopping mall. Earl had always known she came from a well-off family, but seeing her driving a luxury car to school at such a young age still surprised him. At the mall, Belle picked out several high-end outfits for Earl to try on. When Earl stepped out of the fitting room, she couldn't help but stare, momentarily stunned. Even the sales assistant exclaimed with admiration, "Wow, you look so handsome." Though Belle's heart echoed the sentiment, she quickly composed herself, putting on an indifferent front. "Try another one," she said coolly. As Earl went back into the fitting room, the staff began whispering to each other. "That guy is so good-looking. I really like him." "Then, go for it. He's not her boyfriend." "How do you know? She said so earlier." "Really? Then, maybe I should try." Though their voices were soft, Belle overheard them. A sudden wave of unease swept over her. Frowning, she couldn't hold back and declared firmly, "He's my boyfriend." Her tone carried a rare conviction, as if she were genuinely afraid that someone might take Earl from her. The sales assistants were startled into silence, not daring to say anything more. Belle, however, felt a pang of frustration. Since when did she start caring so much about Earl? After trying on several outfits, Belle concluded that Earl was a natural model. She bought every outfit he had tried on, leaving the store with a satisfied smile. Next, she dragged Earl to the women's section. After trying on a dress, she turned to him and asked, "Does this look good?" Earl shook his head. Even though the dress suited her perfectly, he deliberately said, "Not really." Belle frowned and tried on 2 more outfits, asking again, "How about these? Did they look good?" Earl was growing impatient, so he finally relented. "They look good." Belle beamed, her smile as radiant as a flower. Turning to the assistant, she said, "I'll take both. Please wrap them up." After shopping for a long while, Belle's high heels began to take their toll. She turned to Earl and said, "Let's find a place to sit down for a bit." Earl nodded and pointed to a bench nearby. "Let's sit over there." Belle nodded and took a step, but her ankle twisted, and she fell to the ground with a thud. The pain brought tears to her eyes. Earl quickly rushed over to help her up, concern evident in his voice. "Are you okay? Did you sprain your ankle?" "I think so," Belle said softly as she rubbed her ankle. Tears glistened in her eyes, making her look pitiful and delicate. Chapter 48. Earl helped Belle to a nearby bench and asked, "Can you still walk?" "What do you think?" Belle shot him an annoyed glare. How could someone be so oblivious? Couldn't he say something comforting at a time like this? But as Earl knelt down and gently massaged her sprained ankle, a soothing warmth spread through Belle's body. She sneaked a glance at his focused profile, and a sweet feeling bubbled up inside her. Being cared for by Earl like this felt nice. "Does it still hurt?" Earl asked, looking up at her. "It's much better now," Belle murmured, a little embarrassed as she averted her gaze. "Let's head back." "Okay." As they strolled slowly together, Belle leaned her head against Earl's shoulder. Before long, half her body was pressed against his, as if she were hoping for a comforting hug. Earl's heart raced at the soft sensation of her skin against his. He quickly turned his head, trying to calm his thoughts. When they reached the parking lot, Belle didn't immediately pull away. Instead, she gazed at Earl with her bright eyes and asked, "Big Bun, can you drive?" Earl nodded. To his surprise, Belle suddenly wrapped her arms around his neck and said softly, "Then, hold me while you drive." "I don't want to let go." She seemed to revel in the security of Earl's embrace. Memories of their first kiss, with its mix of shyness and sweetness, came flooding back to her. That fleeting moment of intimacy had left her heart fluttering. But Belle quickly reminded herself of her plan. She was supposed to make Earl fall for her, humiliate him, and then discard him. She couldn't let herself get too attached. Yet, her cheeks flushed red at the thought. Earl, for the most part, was struggling to keep his composure. Fighting the urge to give in, he said firmly, "That's not safe." Though she was disappointed, Belle didn't insist. Instead, her mood shifted abruptly. She pushed Earl away, pouting as she climbed into the passenger seat. Caught off guard, Earl asked, "Why did you push me all of a sudden?" Belle shot him a glare. "What's it to you? I like pushing you. You're such an idiot. I can't stand you. Don't talk to me. We have nothing in common." True to her word, Belle ignored Earl for the rest of the drive, her arms crossed as she fumed silently. When they arrived at the campus gates, she told Earl to get out, her expression still stormy. Without waiting for a response, she drove off. Feeling bewildered, Earl returned to the dorm, only to find it bustling with activity. Isaac, Joshua, Ronnie, and several girls from their shared dorm room were gathered there, chatting and laughing. The atmosphere was lively. Luca was notably absent, as he was busy preparing for the upcoming youth vocal showcase finals in the Calisota region. Samuel, who was eager to make a good impression, was running around serving drinks and snacks, even though Jenna wasn't there. He hoped to win some favor through her friends. The main guest of the day, however, was a middle-aged man. Isaac introduced him to Earl. "This is Coach Jordan Huntington. Coach, this is Earl Hernandez, the one with great basketball potential. I think he'd be a great addition to our team." Jordan, however, was skeptical. Isaac, can he shoot? What's his sprint time? Can he dunk? Or is he just good at warming the bench? We're not taking just anyone. Laughter broke out around the room, with others casting amused and skeptical glances at Earl, as if he were a sideshow act. Chapter 49. Earl let out a cold laugh. As long as I shoot better than you and run faster, that's enough. Dunking. Believe it or not, I could dunk above you. Joshua's face turned ashen with rage. Queenie immediately jumped to his defense. What a joke. You think you're better than Joshua. Joshua's aiming to be a professional basketball player. Look at yourself in the mirror before you try to compare with him. Queenie, well aware of the tension between Joshua and Earl, made no effort to hide her disdain. Ronnie chimed in mockingly, Queenie, why bother arguing with someone like him? I bet he doesn't even know how to dribble properly. The girls in the room stifled their laughter at his comment. Jordan's expression darkened. Earl's brazen attitude was grating on him. He cleared his throat and asked, So, you're pretty confident in your basketball skills, huh? Unbothered by the mocking tone, Earl nodded calmly. I'd say so. Jordan raised an eyebrow and said sternly, Confidence is good for young people, but arrogance will break you. From what I see, you lack both Joshua's talent and his work ethic. What makes you think you're better than him? Where does your confidence come from? Unfazed, Earl flashed a faint smile. Mr. Huntington, isn't it a bit hasty to judge without having seen me play? Jordan stared coldly at Earl. I'm an excellent judge of character. The world is much bigger than your narrow view allows. Only humility leads to progress. He stood, pausing briefly before adding, Still, if you're interested, you can join the team. Perhaps fetching water or cracking jokes would suit you best. The room erupted in laughter once more. After Jordan and Joshua left, the girls from the shared dorm room also headed out. From a distance, Earl overheard Joshua ask, Coach, why let someone like him join us? Jordan's fading voice replied, It's about showing him how vast the world is. Helping a frog out of the well is a worthy deed. Ahead of them, Anya, Queenie, and Jessica walked together, with Queenie still ranting about Earl's audacious claims. Jessica and Anya chimed in occasionally, agreeing with her. Behind them, Miranda and Anna strolled side by side. Anna glanced back at the dorm where Earl remained, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. Miranda smiled. Anna, what do you think of Earl? Anna smiled shyly. He's not bad. His eyes are pretty sharp. She didn't voice her opinion that Earl came off as a bit arrogant. Miranda chuckled softly. Isaac seems to get along with him well. He's actually a pretty decent guy. Anna blinked, her expression curious. Really? Miranda's smile widened. Why not give it a shot, Anna? Maybe you could get to know him better. Anna froze, startled. Me, and him. Chapter 50. Miranda nodded. Exactly. You're the only one in our dorm who hasn't made a move yet. She gave Anna a gentle pat on the back as she spoke. Frustrated, Anna quickly shook her head and ran off. The idea of being involved with Earl hadn't even crossed her mind. Early the next morning, Earl received a call from Patrick, asking him to come over and pick up his share of the profits. Earl and Patrick had always handled their profit splits in cash. Despite the widespread use of digital payments, Patrick's plug-in studio operated in a gray area, so they avoided leaving any traceable records for security reasons. This was the first time they were splitting profits after 2 months of work. After deducting expenses, Earl's share came to a hefty $100,000. When Earl arrived at Patrick's studio around noon, Patrick warmly invited him to lunch. During the meal, Patrick gave a detailed report on the performance of their Crimson Veil plugin, including the challenges they were facing. He sincerely sought Earl's input on the situation. Afterward, as they chatted casually, Earl steered the conversation toward PC games, subtly probing Patrick's thoughts on game development. Though making plugins was lucrative, the gray nature of the business posed significant risks. Moreover, the earnings paled compared to the booming online gaming industry. Developing games seemed like a more promising path. However, Earl was aware of the challenges. Small online games lacked strong earning potential, while developing large-scale games required substantial funding and a robust team. Earl didn't lay out his ideas directly but instead hinted at them through their discussion. Yet Patrick gave no clear response to his suggestions. When Earl left the studio, he was carrying a heavy black bag filled with $100,000 in cash. Realizing it wasn't safe to wander around with so much money, he decided to deposit it at the bank on campus. At the counter, a young woman greeted him. Her name was Raina Landron. Though she had a certain elegance, her long tenure at the bank had made her somewhat pragmatic and indifferent. When she saw Earl approach, she didn't even look up, addressing him with a hint of impatience. "How much are you depositing? For amounts under $5,000, please use the ATM. There are other people waiting in line." But when Earl casually placed the bag containing $100,000 on the counter, Raina's attitude shifted. Her dismissive expression melted into a warm smile. A student depositing such a large sum. Raina couldn't help but wonder about his background. Was he the heir of a wealthy family? With this thought in mind, her demeanor grew even more welcoming. She efficiently processed the deposit while sneaking glances at Earl's bank card details. To her surprise, Earl's account already held over $500,000. What's more, over the past 2 months, there had been multiple deposits labeled as service fees. Raina's curiosity deepened, but she maintained her professional composure, her mind racing with questions about this seemingly ordinary student. In just a few months, he had amassed such wealth. Who exactly was this guy? Could he be a budding entrepreneur? Raina's smile grew warmer, almost flirtatious, as she leaned in slightly. "Sir, would you be interested in becoming one of our VIP clients?" Earl, unfamiliar with the perks of being a VIP, looked at Raina with a hint of confusion. Noticing his expression, Raina eagerly began explaining. She detailed the exclusive benefits, from festival rewards to premium services, all determined by one's account balance. Additionally, as savings increased, clients could enjoy higher interest rates. Earl quickly honed in on the key detail. "So, if I reach $1 million in deposits, the interest rate would be even higher."